All right, it's Mama Jess here. I guess I'll make this a two-part video. So I was just saying, it's important that you're not involved in the Palestine argument because you're not equipped. You probably truly cannot even keep your own room clean, and yet you want to clean up the Middle East. It's like you're not thinking clearly. That's not something you are equipped to do. And even though you have been taught ideals, ideologies do not always line up with reality. And you learn that with everything you're doing. If you're learning how to organic farm, if you're learning how to bake sourdough bread from a ferment, learning to sew, whatever it is, you can have an idea, you can have a creative idea, but when you actually implement it in real life, you realize it's much more difficult than you thought. So it's important that you get grounded. Everything you do absolutely has to be on the ground, in reality, guarding against the fantasy world that you have been saturated with. Because if you're in fantasy, you are not going to be able to think properly, okay? And you're also going to have a kind of an over-exaggerated view of your heroism and courage. Just because you play video games doesn't mean you would actually, like, you can be shooting people and killing them. I bet you can't even kill a chicken with a knife. It would terrify you. So you have to get out of these delusions and these ideas of who you are or what the world is based on your inexperience and the lack of information that you've been given. The other things I think it's important that you begin to pull out of are a lot of pop culture thinking. Again, you need to get your mind in a position of clarity and learning real things. So my concern in pop culture is we have a lot of young people who don't have a lot of life experience giving counsel, and they don't have the wisdom. And even if you might have a certain degree of knowledge because you've listened to podcasts or read books, applied knowledge is an entirely different ballgame that really shows you that you're not as strong, you're not as smart, you're not as capable, you're not as skilled as you thought you were. So I have watched young people. One was this young man. He played Guitar Hero, right? So he's got like these 4 prime colors and he's just like slamming away like, and he's just going and he's just rocking out and he's winning Guitar Hero and he's passing every level. And what I know about this young man is he cannot play the G chord on a guitar. And if he did, it would probably hurt his fingers. I've also known other people, like young people, they think they're very smart because they study like heavy philosophies and theology, and they're studying Japanese, and they are incredible video game players. But this one, he could not light a match. He was too scared. So this is what you need to understand about yourself. And just know that I went through this myself. I had a lot of grandiose thoughts about who I was until I was confronted with reality and really being the one to have to deal with things and do things. So I think it's important that you get away from pop culture. You get away, because mind you, popular culture is very much invested in manipulating you so that you buy something. And generally, usually you're buying something you don't actually need. So whether you're raised on commercials on television, whether you're just watching the ads on a YouTube thing you're watching, we are bombarded with advertisements, and they're all saying, you need to be afraid. You don't have what you need. If you do what I do, then you're going to be happy. And just, I don't want you to be a pawn. I don't want you to be manipulated, whether it's by a cereal commercial or a university professor. I want you to be free. I want you to be able to think critically. I want you to be able to analyze something and really assess it and go, that's not true. Are you trying to profit off of me? Are you trying to exploit me? Make me a slave? So that is really important. So that's probably kind of the majority of everything. I'm sure there's all kinds of other things out there I'm not aware that the young people are consumed by, that somehow their brain has been overloaded with whether political, socioeconomic, fantasy, video games, or just massive daydreams like, I'm going to be an NFL star. I'm going to be a rock star. Like, I think it's important that you actually take a look at many of these people's lives and realize there's an enormous amount of addiction, an enormous amount of trouble in many of these people's lives that we consider to be so wonderful and famous. And I'm going to leave you with this thought. I have been watching these college courses on Rome. Very fascinating civilization and the decline of that country, where they loved violence. They were hungry to watch people be killed in the arenas, animals be brutalized. They were completely consumed with entertainment. And so they, bread and circus. They were really big on bread. So they would like import wheat from all around the world. And so kind of like a gluttonous spirit and just wanting to be entertained all day. And I'm concerned that that's very much similar to our status right now in the United States of America. Not everybody, of course, but it's massive. But what I found very interesting is by the end of this civilization, by the time it fell, people knew more about the popular culture of sports athletes and all forms of entertainment. They knew the specs on everybody that was famous in the entertainment world, but they knew nothing about the politicians. They knew nothing about the political world. They weren't interested. They wanted to be entertained. And so that is concerning. That's why I'm guarded against this knowing too much about the latest movies or the latest shows or the latest musicians or going to these massive concerts of 50,000 people. When you're actually, if I were to sit down with you, you don't know the basics of the Constitution. You don't know the reality of the fullness of the knowledge of history, that slavery has always been an institution in this world from the beginning of time. People groups have always been oppressed. Whites have been enslaved, as well as other ethnicities. So it's really important that you get a foundation of just being in reality, so that you're not participating in the decline of the country that is, just wanting to participate in all this hedonism and all this play and fantasy, while and taking advantage of the freedoms that you have, while the country is going to ruin because of corrupt politicians or, freedom is not something that is just always going to be there. If you have freedom, it's something you're always going to have to fight and defend and protect, because there are a lot of thieves in this world, and people don't want you to be free. There really is a spirit of slavery in this world. And sadly, I think what I see in this country right now is that the slavery is so sophisticated that a lot of people think that they're free while they're slaves. So we're going to touch on those things. So anyway, so I want you to get all these things out of your life, simplify your time, like really minimize your time online. Come to Mama Jess, and I'm going to get you started on some really practical things that are going to help you, get sane, because I see a lot of insanity and you're not feeling peaceful, and I want you to feel peaceful. We don't want to live in anxiety and depression all day. That is not healthy for you, and it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, catch up with you next time.